It's good to be back. I'm back. It's been a little while, and of course, it's not the greatest result to be talking about on the comeback, but it's good to say that we're back doing streams. And I don't remember when the last stream was. I'd have to look it up, but the last stream was definitely, it might have been a year ago. The last live stream, because we've been doing pre-recorded videos basically up until now. So I know there's a couple of other channels that are on at the moment. So if you are listening on like a playback, I suppose it's called, then hello, it's good to be back. Hopefully, we'll be having some guests coming along as well throughout the stream, but we'll have to just wait and see how it goes. Feel free to join as well if you are just joining in. Feel free to come and have a chat with me for a couple of minutes, and we'll kind of talk about that Fulham loss yesterday, which is a bit disappointing. It leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth because it's been such a sweet start to the season. So, of course, naturally, you're feeling a real disappointment at the fact that we haven't gone and won that game yesterday or taken a point from it. When in reality, I actually think that game was more than drawable. And actually, on the face of it, probably should have been a game that should have ended in a draw in the fairest of results, because I don't really think that both teams offered much. There was a lot of shots, but there was only a couple of shots on target for Fulham. And there was only a shot on target for Forest. And I thought that the penalty for Fulham was really quite soft, I'm going to be honest. But the most important thing you can take away from that penalty is it's not the real reason we lost, because the game I didn't think was out of our hands. I didn't think it was in Fulham's hands. And I think it was a very much open game where anything can happen. So we have to kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, it was our fault. Referee should have given us a penalty for the Elanga Calvin Bassey incident. That's my opinion. If you're setting that precedent with that first penalty, you have to give that. But overall, what could we have done better in that 99 minutes of football that we played and only achieved one shot on target in 99 minutes? That's the big problem. What does that tell you, first of all? It tells you that really we're not creating enough really close chances. Why is that? Well, I would say the selection to start with was interesting. I wasn't against it. You can go on my Twitter. I even said I actually quite liked it because I thought it is something different. We are without Morgan, so we do have to adapt and we have to try something different. Awoniyi didn't look fit. I didn't think. I don't think he's ready for a start yet, which is, I'm going to be honest, it's disappointing because what happens next with Awoniyi? I don't really know. I don't know what the long-term future for him is, because his contract will be coming up, I think, in maybe a year or two, and there has to be a serious discussion about Taiwo Awoniyi, because when is too much, in terms of when is there a situation where we think actually he's not reliable anymore at all for the club, which is not great. And I don't like to say it because I love Taiwo, and I'm really praying that he does come back from the injury issues and come good again, because there's clearly quality with Taiwo. There's clear quality, and yesterday there was elements of his game that really I was quite impressed with. The hold-up play was good for the most part. You could tell that when he was in front of goal, he was trying, and he did come close with quite an audacious effort actually, but it went wide. But there's a good player, and I really like Taiwo. But as a football club, that there is no sentiment, especially in the Premier League. And there does have to be sort of questions asked over whether his fitness is a massive problem going forward. And if he's going to be a third striker, if you like, and you're going to bring in someone else alongside Chris Wood in January potentially, but more than likely the summer, then that's fine, because I suppose he can be that third striker given his issues. But for him, will he want that? I don't know. But the whole stream's not going to be about a 1 year, of course, but it's a concern I have. And relating to the formation we started with, perhaps something that I might have ignored is actually the fact that we need to start stronger at home. And one thing I actually did touch on earlier in the week was that in order to beat a team like Fulham, we've got the examples from playing them previously. You've got to start off strong. You have to start with that intensity. And I wasn't really sure that we started with that, having the four midfielders. I understand the overload. I understand why Nuno has tried that. The team it worked against was Liverpool. Why did it work against Liverpool? Liverpool start with that intensity. They start with that really high energy gameplay. And we've got so many midfielders, we can slow them down. We can take the game into our pace. But I almost felt like yesterday the game's pace wasn't set, and for some reason Forest were waiting for someone to set it, which for a home team I think is the complete wrong approach to take. Forest are at home; they haven't won at home for quite some time now, and you're playing Fulham. And with the greatest respect, because Fulham aren't a bad team, they've got a good manager, Marco Silva. They've got some really tidy players. You know, Emile Smith-Rowe was good. Iwobi was good. Anthony Robinson, as you'd expect, was good. And overall, they're not a bad side. But if we're serious about being a mid-table plus team, which I think is more than doable, by the way, I can name 4 or 5 teams worse than Forest so far this year. We have to be putting and setting the pace our way in those games. We've got to be taking the game at our pace. We've got to be playing it with an intensity that that we started the last game in when we beat Fulham. We beat Fulham 3-1. Not even that long ago in April. And their team hasn't changed dramatically since then. Of course, they've made additions. Both teams have. But there's no reason why we couldn't start with that same intensity and try and catch them off guard, because there's plenty of occasions where we could do that, especially when you're pressing so high. You can do that. And that's sort of one of the reasons why I like the double striker approach. And actually later in the game, I like the Jota Silva approach, because you've got 2 strikers pressing, which is really good. And I think that Joachim Andersen and definitely Calvin Bassey, because Calvin Bassey with the ball at his feet isn't as good as Joachim Andersen. When you're putting the pressure on them, they're going to make mistakes. And that's the intensity we should have gone for. But the way we lined up didn't say that. And that was disappointing. So that is on Nuno Espirito Santo. That is on him tactically. And actually, I'd say that's the first time tactically he's got it pretty much wrong completely from the start this season. And because we didn't start with that intensity, Fulham took the game into their hands. They played it at their pace, and they toyed with us a bit. And that frustrated me, because we've seen that Forest can take charge of a game, maybe not necessarily dominate it, because I think that's something we've struggled to do for quite a while now. But Forest can take a game at their own pace. And when they're playing a bigger opponent, of course, you're going to expect them to play in a sort of low block or play maybe slightly more negatively. You understand that, as we did against Liverpool. We kind of had more in midfield and we looked to overload and try and slow them down. Whereas in reality, in this game, you start with players like Jota Silva, you start with players like Hudson-Odoi, and maybe even Ramon Sosa, I'm not sure, as a replacement for either of those I've just mentioned. And okay, I don't think that Silva made the greatest impact when he came on, and I don't think that Sosa made the greatest impact. Hudson-Odoi was all right, but not the greatest impact. But I do think that, with respect, they should have probably started. I think that the intensity that Silva offers is really impressive, because he just wants to win the ball all the time. When he loses the ball, he wants to win it back. But he was played deeper in midfield yesterday. It didn't suit him. I feel like he has to be pretty much in front of goal, or he has to be on the wing. But I just feel that at the moment, Forest are in a position where if you start every game at home a little bit more meek and you don't just go for it and you don't play those players that are more intense, that's what's going to happen. You are constantly going to be playing into the hands of other teams. So you have to be more intense. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that Anthony Elanga's impressed very much lately. The assist at Liverpool was brilliant. The pass was exquisite. It was one of the most beautiful passes we've seen all season for Forest. But you have to do more than that as a Premier League footballer. And Anthony Elanga's stats last season were excellent, but his form did take a huge dip at the end of last year. And I'm not saying there's not a good player there, because I think Anthony Elanga is a superb footballer, and there's a hell of a lot of potential for him to go and do more for this football club and go in the Premier League in his own career, or wherever he chooses to go after Forest at some point. But as a player, he does have to sort of, I think, build on last season. He needs to build his confidence, and a goal would do that for him. I do think a goal would definitely do that. And the fans have to get behind him. I don't think that the atmosphere was very good yesterday. And I don't want it to be all negative, because I hate being negative about Forest, because in case you didn't know, I really like Forest. I love Forest. But you have to be honest. And I'm just pointing out what I saw yesterday from someone that goes to every game and works at the game. And my primary position is to analyse the game and talk about it. And the atmosphere wasn't there. The players, but did the players give the fans much to sing about? It's a good argument, you know. But Elanga needs that pat on the back, and he just needs a goal. And I think he's got to go out there and get that now, in order to really for him to kick on. But at the moment, would I be starting him? No, I'm going to be honest, no. But yesterday, should a player of his profile have started, or wingers just as a whole have started? Yes, definitely. I wanted to go for a 4-2-3-1, and I wanted them to start attacking. And I understand, again, Nuno's ideas, but you've got to give it to the teams. So there's a couple of comments coming in. Mark, wrong team selection, and we need to take the game to them, which we did not. Definitely. I agree, Mark. It's not the end of the world. I think someone commented under my Twitter saying some people just like to moan. But what is football if you can't have your opinion about it? And I'm not moaning. I'm just saying the negatives from yesterday and what I thought. Because every single game that we've played, I've put my opinion out there. Every game I've been to, and even not been to and just watched the highlights of or listened to the radio on, I've put my opinions out there. They can be good, they can be bad. That's fine. That's just how it works. And I'm not here to moan. But if we just ignored the negatives and simply went with the positives, and also vice versa, then we're not being honest with ourselves and we're not going to actually make any improvements. And as fans, we won't understand what the club need to do to improve and how conversations be structured from there. So we're not always going to be talking about positive things. And this is one thing about Forest being unbeaten to start the game, to start the season for 5 games being unbeaten, is that we've kind of put ourselves in a position where we're in such a good place that any sort of loss, especially a performance like yesterday, would be a disaster. And I don't think the fan base has reacted in a disaster. I think it'd be really naive to say that. I think that there's been comments that perhaps have been a little bit over the top, but that comes with every loss. And even sometimes with a win, you get, stuff like that. But it's not the end of the world. But of course, you want to improve on that. And as you say, Mark, we need to improve in an attacking sense. That's the really important thing. And we can. You can clearly see, at least from my eyes, which, aren't great, but you can clearly see that there's potential for this Forest team to kick on and do really well, to score more goals. But Nuno has to get the selection right. The fans have to get behind the players, and the players have to believe in themselves, because you've gone 5 games unbeaten in the top division in the world, and you've got 9 points in 6. It's not a bad tally. But the points do need to keep coming. So, of course, we have to keep looking forward. You can't keep looking back. So I suppose that's why we do these streams, and we kind of talk about it and then we look forward. Joe, great in the studio yesterday, my friend. Well done. It wasn't even you in the studio. Last weekend, for Brighton, legend. What do you think about Awoniyi and Jota up front together sometime? Maybe. Maybe. I'm not sure on Awoniyi at the moment. I'm not sure. Perhaps if it's late game, I'd maybe suggest it. I like Jota Silva because if you were playing in a 4-2-4 in a way, you've got your wingers and your 2 strikers. I do feel that Jota Silva is someone who could sit slightly behind a striker and in a free role do quite well. But I don't, he's not Morgan Gibbs-White. This is the thing. And this is actually an issue that I've highlighted for quite some time on the channel, that I do worry that Forest maybe are a bit one player, not a one player team, because I still think that there's a lot of quality in that team without Morgan Gibbs-White would be fine. But I said it in the press room actually to a couple of people that were at the game, that actually I think Forest, the only player that Forest can't replace in their current team is Morgan Gibbs-White. You can replace any other player. There's someone waiting for them. You can't replace Gibbs-White. I like Jota Silva. I love Ramon Sosa. They're both great. They're not ready to play in that 10. I don't think they've got what it takes to be that Morgan Gibbs-White in the team. But then you also need to look at playing a formation where maybe you don't need that Morgan Gibbs-White when he's not there. But instead of leaving quite a big gap, which I felt Forest did. And by the way, when they brought on 4 wingers at the end of the game, and you've got Ryan Yates in midfield, Emil Smith-Rowe's running through it, skipping around like there's just so much space. And he had it. There was so many times Forest lost the ball on the edge of the opposition box in the final third, and it's been cleared to Emil Smith-Rowe, and he's had a run, and he's got either Iwobi running next to him, or later in the game, Muniz or Jimenez, and you've given him that free space because you've gone, we need 4 wingers up there, and you've got no one in midfield. Such a drastic change of going from having so many midfielders to essentially none other than Yates, who's on a yellow card, just seemed like the wrong game management for me, the wrong level of game management for me. So it is difficult. I get it. And, I know that it's not easy being a manager. So, I understand the rationale behind why Nuno made these decisions. I do definitely understand it. But at the same time, it didn't help because you gave Emil Smith-Rowe that, and he kind of did most of the work in that second half. You gave him that freedom to the City just to go and run about with it. And if you give a creative midfielder or a creative attacker like Smith-Rowe, to relate it to ourselves, like Gibbs-White, they will punish you. And that's what elite players do. And Smith-Rowe, Gibbs-White, they're both elite players. They both play in similar roles. And that is what happens when you give them space. And that's where Forest got it wrong in that second half. And Fulham, they weren't brilliant. That's probably why they didn't make it too. But Forest, on the other hand, weren't either because they didn't equalise. So, but yeah, I'm not sure about Silva or Sosa starting as the strikers. I'm not suggesting that. I want them as wingers, personally. Because, as I said earlier, I think that Anthony Elanga needs to earn that start again. Because he hasn't been good enough. And that's just how it is, I think, So, and you've got to do what's best for the team. You've got hungry players like Sosa and Silva. Again, they both came on and they weren't great necessarily when they came on, but they're giving their all and they've got the energy and you can see that they're trying hard. And, I just think that they need to get that chance. And a loss like yesterday, by the way, is only really this hard to take because of the fact that we've had 5 games unbeaten. That's the reality of it. It's only really difficult to take because of the fact that we've had so many games unbeaten, and it's almost alien to us that we'd have an unbeaten start like this. I think the last time we were unbeaten in 6 games to start the season was 2014-15 season, and then actually the last time we went 6 unbeaten in the Prem was 1995 to 96, I think it was. So it would have been great. It would have been great to equal records and then, go forward and potentially beat them. You never know. But that just didn't happen. So I did question the work rate. I did question the manager's selection. I did question Anthony Elanga. But in a way, even though Anthony Elanga's off form, you almost would have rather him started than have no wingers at all. So, yeah, there's a lot to take away from that game. And again, it isn't all negative because we were without Gibbs-White. So there obviously is that difficult part. There's the difficult part in the fact that the VAR situation, with Elanga going down, not getting a penalty, and there was a previous call as well on Awonyi, which actually I didn't think was a penalty personally because I thought that Awonyi had kicked Joachim Andersen when Andersen went for the clearance, which is fair enough. But again, I didn't think any of them were, were penalties, and that says a lot about football, really. When like for example at Brighton, when I think it might have been. Can't remember if it was Minte or Baleba that had it wasn't Minte. I think it was. I can't remember who it was, but they'd kicked the leg of I think it was Alex Moreno, like studs up, and nothing was said of it. VAR didn't intervene, so you kind of think, well, what's going on? Where's the consistency? So there was acts I think there that did negatively impact Forest, of course, but again, this was Forest's opportunity to extend that unbeaten run, and there was the opportunity. I don't think Fulham were fantastic. And we sort of made it a bit easier for them. And when I was where I was sitting, there was Fulham fans talking about getting to Europe and all sorts, and going, going on a big European tour, and this is another win for them. It's great, and it is a fantastic win for them. Don't get me wrong. This is I think the most points that they've got in the opening 6 games in the Premier League ever. But you think, well, they didn't play that fantastic, and we didn't make them look fantastic. We just made ourselves look really poor. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you're thinking as well. There's 4 people on at the moment. I know it's a bit of a strange one. It is a Sunday night, so I do understand people are busy and doing bits themselves. But let me know what you're thinking. If you are listening on playback as well, make sure to drop me a comment. I'll try and reply to you as well on my phone. So do just drop a comment, as I say. And I will be back doing regular streams as well most weeks. So there will be one next Sunday. Pardon me, I've been at work all day, so I'm a little bit tired. But actually, when I was at work as well, which is quite fun, I picked up one of these. You can see it. It's the Brian Clough autobiography, which is really good. So I found it on the bookshelf. Maybe it's a sign. And funnily enough, Gary Birtles came into my workplace later that day, and I spoke to him about it. So that was quite fun. Hopefully, he'll be coming back on soon. Actually, Gary Birtles will get him back on, and maybe Michael Dawson. I'll drop them both a message, and hopefully we can get them back and do some interviews as well, which would be quite good. Yeah, get your questions in. Let's have a quick chat. Let's have a chat. We're here till about 22 sort of time, 1:45. So we'll see about that. Who do you think is our best like-for-like replacement for Gibbs-White when needed? I'd argue Anderson, but he's still not ideal. I would say Anderson. Based on how he played yesterday, I do feel he should have been higher up the pitch. There was some suggestions of Ward-Prowse as the 10, but honestly, I'm not that keen. I don't think he's physical enough to get that. I feel like Anderson's got a really good structure to him. He's quite nimble. He's agile. He's good on the ball, and he can pass. From a really difficult angle. There was a couple of good passes down the right wing and a couple over the top of the Fulham defence from him yesterday that I found really impressive. And he moved in and out of defenders really well as well. So, I would like to see Anderson get a shot at the 10, maybe here and there. But I would, I'm still very content with seeing him playing in a central role a little bit deeper. I think that he's quite good there. So I've definitely not got any concerns with that. But no, look, I think that Anderson will probably be my choice. I don't think Dominguez really jumps in that 10. And he's a player I do worry about for the future, Dominguez, because I like him. I think he's a brilliant player, and I think he's actually technically one of the better players in the squad. But he's an awkward player because where does he fit? He gets played in really random positions like on the wing, or it's not where he should be playing. So what do you do with him? What do you do? What do you do with Iwanye, with his injury issues? I really hope again that we can find solutions to these issues. But when it comes to the replacement for Gibbs-White, I'd argue that Anderson's the one because he's creative and he's strong and he's quick on the ball, and that's something you need from a number 10. So. Yeah, I would have liked him. Do we need a striker in January? I'd be worried if anything happens to Wood. I agree with your thoughts on Iwanye. I do think, yes. I think my personal roadmap for Forest recruitment should be, in my opinion, should be a striker in January. Because, again, goals late on in the season, as well as that cover that you need anyway, is really important. I thought that we needed a goalkeeper next summer. I think that'll be Forest's priority next summer. But if they don't get a striker in January, then you could be seeing a big signing for both strikers, for a striker and a goalkeeper. So, I just feel that Wood is great. I love him. He's a brilliant player, and his hold-up play yesterday was quite impressive. There was some really tough passes put his way, but he held them up well. But I do think that you do need someone big that is going to come and challenge him, but he's also going to cover for him because he can only play so much. He's going on 33. And he's still banging in goals, of course, but how long will he do that for? And also, what's your cover like? Awoniyi, if Wood gets injured, and Awoniyi's not really been fit for quite some time, you've got a problem on your hands. So, do I think we need a striker in January? I'm going to be honest, I think yes. Omar Marmoush from Stuttgart, I think it is. He's doing really well. And I'm not suggesting that we do sign him because, of course, the recruitment team will have their own targets. And also, you've got to put your trust in Forest recruitment because their recruitment this summer has been perfect. And just because we lost to Fulham, I don't think anyone will change their mind on that. They've been great. But, yeah, I do think the Forest need a striker come January. I just think that, as you say, it's best not to take that risk. In all fairness. So, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. Now, we'll try and get a couple more questions. I know it's a bit quiet, so we probably will end the stream a little bit earlier, probably in the next 5-10 minutes. But thank you to those that are with us at the moment. Joe, Mark, good to have your contributions in here as well. And I know it all kind of sprung on you a little bit late that I was coming back, but I've just been meaning to. I've had a bit of a weird weekend, really. Obviously, with football means I'm busy anyway. I spend most of the time doing my notes, but I've also had a bit of an issue with my hand. It's a bit swollen. I got bit by a bug, so I don't know what happened with that. But that's taken up a bit of my time as well as work. So, in all honesty, I've not been on the streaming because of just personal things. There's some things that went on earlier in the season at the start, just family issues, really, that caused me to not be able to stream. And also, I've been in the midst of a house move for about a year. So when we finally got it sorted, we should be moving, the next couple of months. So it will cause a bit of disruption again, of course. But when I am moved, I'll have my own studio where I'm moving. I'll have my own office, so I can do all my stuff from there. So that should be really fun. And it means I'll be able to make more content as well, because I'll have my own space. So yeah, it should be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, I will still be streaming in the meantime as well. So do keep in touch, because as you can see, I've got my Twitter just on the bottom left as well. I'm Jamie Martin, so do be sure to follow me there. We will call it at that, really. I think we've analysed quite a bit about the game. It's a little bit disappointing again, as we say, but nonetheless, Forest, 1 loss in 6 in the Premier League. Who would have thought we'd be saying that this time a few years ago, and even this time last year, maybe even in the summer. But exciting stuff. Start the season, just a bit of a disappointing game yesterday. So more analysis coming very, very soon. We'll be back on Sunday next week after the Chelsea game. So make sure that you are here and you're ready for a bit of a chat. It'll probably be a little bit earlier, probably more around 7 o'clock. So it'll be a little bit of a nicer time for those that work on Monday mornings. I work Monday mornings, so I should have probably done it a bit earlier. But do be sure to stick around anyway. So thank you for joining. It's been really great talking to you, and I'll be back next week, 7 p.m. on Sunday, talking about that Forest-Chelsea game and hopefully a good performance. So I'll see you very soon. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon.